when you start studying these assassinations, not one by one, but when you start studying them on like all of them, you will soon see that there's a very clear way that how these things are carried out. So I can even give you, if you want down the way, I can give you like an example how they do it, the different bullet points and what is involved in carrying out one of these things. One of the things they do when they choose patsies is they need to work well in media. They need to look strange, they need to look violent, they need to look weird, and they need to, say things or have a violent background or so on to fit into, so that the population will think, ooh, that's a bad guy. And he looks the thing, he looks strange.
What kind of similarities did you find as far as people involved in this assassination, this conspiracy over there in Sweden, to the JFK case?
If I can go back in history, because there's one thing that I found that are connecting the dots between so many of these big events. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, President Dwight Eisenhower gave his President Richard Nixon the task of forming a group of assassins, highly skilled killers that they could be used on an international level or whoever was a problem for the people in power. And the result of this was a group called Operation 40. This group consists of exiled Cubans and high-ranking CIA operatives. Some of the CIA operatives were Ted Shackley, who was very, very high up and a key person in many. They all are in many of these assassinations all over the place. E. Howard Hunt, I mean, I'm sure your listeners know him from the JFK and Watergate scandal and so on.
Oh, yeah.
You also had David Atlee Phillips, who was later in his career, he was the chief of the Western Hemisphere, way up there. And he was also the controller of Lee Harvey Oswald. He was the guy who painted him black, making him become the patsy. He was also the controller of James Files, who was, in my opinion, one of the shooters, the one behind the picket fence just by the tree. And he was also the controller of a man called Michael Vernon Townley, who was not present in Dealey Plaza at that day, but he was very close to Operation 40 and involved in super many of these assassinations on a global scale before. This Michael Vernon Townley was one of the tasks in the early 1970s was that he was sent to Chile, and he was part of overthrowing Salvador Allende, the president down there. After that, he was deeply involved in Operation Condor, where they tracked down supporters of Allende and killed them globally. And he was also part of blowing up Orlando Lettier in Washington, D.C. I don't know if you remember that. There was a big car bomb where this Chilean former politician Orlando Lettier was blown up together with a woman called Ronnie Moffett. The guy who supplied the bomb was Orlando Bosch, who was president in Dealey Plaza 1963. He was also, he committed like hundreds and hundreds of bombings all over the place, was put away for years and then pardoned by George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. This George Bush Sr., I know you're very aware of this guy because he pops up everywhere. This family is central in everything when it comes to these things. And when Operation 40 was created, the guy that was put there to take care of the funding was George Herbert Walker Bush. His right hand in this was a man called Felix Rodriguez. Felix Rodriguez was later the guy who was given the task to track down Che Guevara in Bolivia, and which he did. And he was also very central in the whole Iran-Contra scandal, working very close to Oliver North. The man that killed Che Guevara was another person from Operation 40. His name was David Morales, and he was the one who shot and killed Che Guevara. But he was also present in Dealey Plaza when he didn't do any shooting, but he was there and part of the whole operation. And he was also at the Ambassador Hotel when Robert Kennedy was killed that very evening, when he was there. He was at that time he was the JM chief of operation, and there were two other CIA operatives that was being observed there. It was the chief of maritime operation, Gordon Campbell, and the chief of psychological warfare operation, George Ioannidis. I mean, what were these high-ranking, super involved people involved with assassinations doing at both these places? No, the tramps were Chauncey Holt, there's the old guy. It wasn't E. Howard Hunt, what many people thought. Chauncey Holt, he was the guy, a CIA operative, and also involved with the mob. He was the guy who supplied all the people there with false identifications, Secret Service badges, and so on that day. Then the middle guy, his name was Charles Harrelson. He was a hit guy from the Chicago mob. He's also the father of Woody Harrelson, what do you call it? The actor. Yeah. Exactly. Cheers. Yeah. And then the first guy in the row, the guy that walks in front, his name was Charles Frederick Rogers. He was with the ONI and also connected to the CIA. He is also has also connections with the Martin Luther King assassinations. But these three people were there that day. I mean, the Dealey Plaza on the 22nd of November that day was just packed with people, of assassins from all over the place. It was like incredible. Lots of these people weren't even involved, but they were still there. I think almost like, you know, if there's a big rock concert, like if Bruce Springsteen comes to town or something like that, then all the musicians come there as well. And I think there must have been a little bit like that. Everybody wanted to be there, because when you look at it from above, they're just all over the place.
Yeah, there's even a picture of a young George Bush there standing, leaning up against the wall.
Yeah, George Bush Sr., like I said, he
Right.
was he was the guy who was taking care of the money, funding this group. And there's now quite clear evidence that he was actually in the Deltex building when the shots were fired. The shooter in that room were Chucky Nicoletti, a hit guy from the Chicago mob. The spotter in that was, his name was Nestor Izquierdo. He was closely connected to Operation 40 as well, an exile Cuban. There's a statue of him in Miami, by the way. And then there was Johnny Rosselli, that was the guy, the connection guy between the Chicago mob and the CIA. These four people were in the room in the Deltex building when these shots were fired. I mean, there were lots of other shooters as well, but George Bush was there for sure. And he was the guy that was taken by the police when they came out, and then they tried to defuse that by later saying that it was another guy that had taken. It was another mob guy who also was connected with oil, that they sort of confused the whole thing with. So, no, he's there for sure. This guy is everywhere when it comes to assassinations on a global scale.
Which one, Bush or?
Bush.